Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Friday Ramblings. It is, of course, Halloween season, and we're going to kick things off with a little bit of a classic. That's also a little current. It kind of goes back and forth, and that is the Munsters. Now, as you recall, a few years ago, we did Halloween Rambling discussing the Addams Family, which is one of two famous classic sitcoms, although it was technically a series of newspaper comics first. But you can watch that video just to hear more about that. That found renewed life with sequel shows, television movies, and even modern movies. So, we're going to discuss the flip side of that coin, and that is the Munsters, and in many ways the two shows were flip sides of each other. Whereas the Addams Family was a group of people that were intentionally bizarre and strange in their habits, but basically human looking, for the most part. Lurch was kind of out there physically. They were, in a world of normals, they stood out because of their behavior. Whereas the Munsters, they were a group of people who were physically off-looking, being based off many classic movie monsters, who were perfectly nice suburban family. So one, it's the personality that makes you kooky. The other, it's the physical appearance. Flip sides of the coin. But that's enough of the comparisons. We're going to save the rivalry discussion for, hey, I don't know, comment section. Go ahead, or cut loose. Just don't be too mean and cruel to people that have differing opinions, because we're all happy here. Ultimately, here's the breakdown though. The Munsters was an American sitcom depicting the home life of a family of good-aligned monsters. Series starred Fred Gwynne as Herman Munster, based off the Frankenstein's monster. Yvonne DiCarlo as Lily, based off the Vampire Bride, Brides of Dracula, however you want to phrase it. But she was a female vampire. Al Lewis as Grandpa, an aged vampire who was said to, in fact, be Count Dracula himself, although most people simply called him Grandpa. It wasn't too heavily played up, every single episode. Beverly Owen, although later played by Pat Priest, as their niece Marilyn, the only normie in the family, as far as physical appearances go, and their werewolf-esque son, Eddie. There was also, of course, a family pet named Spot, who was a fire-breathing dragon. The series was produced by the same people that brought us Leave It to Beaver, and was a satire of American suburban life. As we discussed in the intro a minute ago, that they were ultimately the same wholesome, loving family that you would get on various sitcoms of the time, even though their physical appearances were references to classic Universal monster movies. Now, it did achieve, for its time, higher Nielsen ratings than the Addams Family, which, last time we mentioned that rivalry, folks. In 1965, The Munsters was nominated for the Golden Globe Award for Best Television Series, but lost to The Rogues. In the 21st century, it has received several TV Land Award nominations, and is considered one of the all-time cult classics. So let's get into more of these specific plot points. Family is considered Transylvania American and lived at the famous 1313 Mockingbird Lane in the fictional city of Mockingbird Heights. Herman is the family's sole wage earner, although Lily and Grandpa do make short-lived attempts to earn money from time to time. Though This does not mean Herman is the tyrannical head of the household. Wife Lily makes many decisions, and Herman, being a lovable, goofy, good man, certainly does not object to his wife having a voice in running the household. According to episode 44, they were married in 1865, which means, yes, they also have inhuman lifespans, because that would have made it their 100th anniversary. As we said, the show had normal human Marilyn to help further make these characters stand out, even when they are all gathered inside their own home. To remind you, this is not a world of monsters. The Munsters family is in and of itself unique. Since Universal jointly produced the Munsters, the show was able to employ designs that were copyrighted by Universal for the appearance of the characters, especially Herman Munster himself. Thus, it was the most pop culture relevant for its time depictions of these monsters. Now, here's going to be a little bit more of the fun, in that the show itself did not, by modern standards, last a very long time. The original show ran for 70 episodes over 2 seasons. But, again, it should be noted, by modern TV standards, this would be considered acceptable. But, at the time, that was actually a pretty decent batch of episodes. You know, TV shows didn't run for 10 plus years, especially fictional sitcoms, like a lot of successful shows do now. The show did also reference several real sitcoms. For instance, in an episode, Lily tells Herman to have a father-son talk with Eddie because, quote, a thing like this is up to the father. Anyone who's watched Fathers Knows Best for 9 years ought to know that. To which Herman replies, all right, Donna Reed always handles things on her show. And in a later episode, Grandpa described My Three Sons as being about a crazy mixed-up family that's always having weird adventures. The core of the show, though, was a beautiful moral. And that is, to quote Al Lewis himself, philosophically, the format is that in spite of the way people look to you physically, underneath there is a heart of gold. Which was reflected in various social attitudes during the civil rights era. And in fact, in 2020, a speech that Herman made to Eddie in the 65 episode, Eddie's nickname went viral. Quote being, the lesson I want you to learn is that it doesn't matter what you look like, whether you're tall or short or fat or thin or ugly or handsome, like your father, or you can be black or yellow or white, it doesn't matter. What matters is the size of your heart and the strength of your character. Now, as we said, the show ran for 70 episodes, which was considered a pretty respectable run for the time, but that is not the end of the Munsters. If it was, this would be a short video. No, folks, we get to go even further. Now, before we get into what happened after those 70 episodes, we do have to mention the Munsters' iconic mansion, which was a decaying Second Empire Victorian Gothic-style manor. Initially, the town's location was not specified in the series, but in later renditions of the concept, it was described as a small town outside Los Angeles, and was filmed on the Universal Studios backlot, which made for good filming. former Munster house itself was occasionally used in after a remodel in TV show Coach, and after another further remodel, Desperate Housewives. The interiors were filmed on stages 30 and 32 at Universal Studios, and the interior was often riddled with dust, smokes, and cobwebs. And in fact, one of the running gags was that not only would any damage caused by Herman's clumsiness not last, but that there would be the occasional bit of ironic behavior, such as Lily dusting the house, meaning she was literally applying dust to clean areas, as opposed to the reverse, which is what most people do when they say they're dusting. There's also the famous hot rod, known as the Munster Coach, later joined by the Dragula, like Dracula, built by Grandpa, giving them very unique looking vehicles to roam around town in. Now, during the first season, the Munster family appeared in an Easter special where they visited Marine Land of the Pacific, a public oceanarium and tourist attraction, in Palos Verdes, California, to get a new pet for Eddie. The episode aired just once on CBS on April 19th and was long thought lost, and therefore part of the lost media that we've also discussed in the past. You see how all my episode subjects always seem to come back to each other? But fortunately, as we just said, a copy was found and was donated to the Paley Center in New York, and as such has been distributed on the internet and can be found on a few different streaming sites. So good job. We have recovered formerly lost media. Always a wonderful thing. After that, the series would enter syndication on local stations after its original run, including airing in the 90s on Nick at Night and on TV Land, and airing on various networks during the month of October as part of their Halloween programming. Most recently, has been airing on the TV channel Cozy TV, which is owned by NBC Universal. Now, Fred Gwynne and Al Lewis would later appear in full makeup and costumes, riding in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and Fred Gwynne also made solo appearances in character on The Red Skelton Show and The Danny Kaye Show in the 60s. But we're not done yet. That's right, folks. The Munsters is not finished. In 1966, shortly after the series ended, they had the telefilm Munster Go Home, in which the Munsters go to England to claim Munster Hall after the death of an old relative. This would give the fans a chance to see the Munsters in color, as during their original run in the early 60s, the series was in black and white. After that, we got the Mini Munsters, which was a 1-hour animated TV movie aired as part of the ABC Saturday Superstar movie, which was a series of animated movies that would air weekends on ABC, hence the Saturday part, featuring various fictional properties owned by ABC, or that they could get the rights to. In this film, Al Lewis did return to voice his character of Grandpa. 81 would see the Munsters' Revenge, in which the owner of a wax museum creates robots of Herman and Grandpa, uses them as part of a plot to rob a traveling Egyptian antiques exhibit. Gwen, DiCarlo, and Lewis recreated their roles. However, children Eddie and Marilyn were played by Casey Martell and Joe McDonnell. We then got 1995's Here Come the Munsters, in which the family searches for Herman's brother-in-law, Norman Hyde, only to find that he has unknowingly turned himself into Brent Jekyll, who is running for Congress. Thus, they incorporated the character of, yes, Jekyll and Hyde. An all-new cast now plays the main characters of the film. Features a cameo scene of DiCarlo, Lewis, Priest, and Patrick, Fred Gwynne having unfortunately died in 1993, as a bickering family in a restaurant who were served by the new Herman Munster, who was a waiter at the time. 1996 gave us the Munsters' Scary Little Christmas, in which Grandpa accidentally captured Santa Claus and two of his elves, while Lily is trying to win the local neighborhood Christmas home decorating competition. Despite being released only a year after Here Come the Munsters, the film features an entirely different cast. Now, most of these films can be seen on either DVD or streaming service format, so feel free to hunt them down. However, there is still a little bit more to go. From 1998 to 1991, lasting 72 episodes, which means technically it did run longer than the original series, although it was made directly for syndication, and therefore they tend to wait a little longer before canceling things. We have the Munsters today. In the unaired pilot episode, it was explained that the 22-year gap since the end of the previous series was a result of an accident in Grandpa's lab with a new invention of his that put the family to sleep in what we would now call like stasis. They awaken in the late 1980s and must adapt to their new surroundings. The show features John Schuck as Herman, Lee Merriweather as Lily, Howard Morton as Grandpa, and Jason Marsden as Eddie. Marilyn was portrayed by Mary Ellen Dunbar in the unaired pilot and by Hilary Van Dyke thereafter. However, there would be one more attempt to revive a TV series when, in January 2012, a show called Mockingbird Lane, referencing the address of the Munster Mansion, would be announced. This would have been a one-hour drama style that was hyped, bragging about having spectacular visuals. NBC ultimately canceled plans for Mockingbird Lane to be produced as a weekly series, but said that the pilot episode would air in late October 2012 as a Halloween special. The cancellation resulted from disagreements on the show's dark nature and inconsistent tone. This is one of those things that can happen when you try to reboot comedies as dramas. In August 2004, it was announced that Keenan Ivory, Shawn, and Marlon Wayans had signed a deal to write and produce a modern-day film featuring the Munsters. However, that project was scrapped. And in August 2017, it was announced that Seth Meyers, was developing a modern-day interpretation series for NBC, placing the Munsters in Brooklyn, New York, where they would try to adapt to life as an ordinary family. However, the show was never produced. This leads us to the most recent aspect, and that is in 2022, yes, only last year, Rob Zombie created a reboot Munsters movie. The film was released on DVD, Blu-ray, and digital formats on September 27, 2002, and is available to stream on Netflix. It is considered a horror comedy film, and of course stars Sherry Moon Zombie, because, family. Jeff Daniel Phillips, Daniel Roebuck, Richard Brake, Jorge Garcia, Sylvester McCoy, Catherine Schell, and Cassandra Peterson. Yay! Those of you who don't know, Cassandra Peterson is more infamously known as Elvira, who definitely needs her own video at some point. Maybe we'll save her for next year. story takes place prior to the events of the series, serving as an alternate origin story for the characters. Munsters was a co-production of Universal 1440 Entertainment and Spook Show International Films. Originally, Zombie wanted the film to be in black and white like the original series, but the studio refused, and the director opted for a highly saturated look for it, which, certainly helped give it a unique and somewhat vintage look. Now, it also features Butch Patrick, who played Eddie Munster on the original 64 to 66 series as the voice of the Tin Can Man, and Pat Priest, who played Marilyn Munster in the original series, voices a Transylvania Airlines announcer. So we do have a little bit of connections. In a lot of ways, you can say, no matter what you think of the movie personally, I have not seen it yet, so do not consider this any direct quotes and reviews of the movie. But whether you like the movie or not, if you are a fan of the previous Munsters material, it is worth seeing to help give you a sense of completion. I mean, let's be honest, some of those TV movies weren't the best either. But the fact is that Rob Zombie certainly did everything he could to show a sense of respect and love for that original show, which is credit to Rob Zombie. So, will we see anything else from the Munsters? Hard to say. Certainly, depending on, how Rob feels. He could probably talk the studio into cranking out a sequel at some point if he felt like it. There's always the chance for a revived TV series, whether it'll be directly connected to his movie or not. Is a different thing. Ultimately, though, we're going to go through with just a little bit of roundup here. Gold Key Comics did produce a Munsters comic book that ran for 16 issues from 65 to 68 and featured photo covers from the TV series. When the series first appeared, the Comics Code Authority still forbade the appearance of vampires in comic books. However, because Gold Key was not a member of the Comics Magazine Association of America, it was not obligated to conform to the Comics Code, and Lily and Grandpa appeared in the comics without controversy. There was also a video game based on the Munsters published by Again, a division of Alternative Software in 1989 for the Amstrad CPC, ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64, Amiga, Atari ST, MSX, and MS-DOS, but was ultimately criticized and panned by the gaming press because of its short length and lackluster gameplay. In 1990, Atari Corporation released a game called Midnight Mutants for the Atari 7800, featuring Al Lewis's likeness in his Grandpa Munster character on the box and label. However, due to the agreement with Universal, or lack of full agreement, we should say, they could not call him Grandpa Munster, so he was simply called Grandpa. Thus, Midnight Mutants, it is essentially a 50-50 Munsters game. In 1966, a 3-reel Viewmaster set featuring the Munsters episode's most beautiful goal in the world was released, accompanied by a booklet containing drawings and additional text. The set is notable because the photographs provide rare color views of the characters and sets of the original series, including house interiors, Grandpa's dungeon laboratory, and the characters' heavy greenish-white facial makeup. So, let's finish it all up. Should you watch the original series? Yes, it is one of the classic icons of the sitcom world, especially the black and white era. Should you watch the follow-up television movies? The one from '66, certainly. I'll even give you the couple later ones if you want something that feels a little more campy than the original series. The two from the 90s are going to be a little more awkward. But for the sake of completion, why not? Reboot movie? Hey, go for it. Thing is, Rob Zombie's not a horrible director, and when it's a passion project like this, where he obviously cares about what he's adapting and wants to try to make sure people of the original series do feel a connection with new material, you do want to give that stuff a chance. I myself will probably see the movie soon, maybe this year, maybe not. I don't know. I've kind of got a busy October this year. Still, the Munsters as a concept is greatness. So, I will tell you this, while I did admit I do have some various plans and things going on in October, because we do love Halloween here at Roulette Productions, you are still going to get a Halloween-themed ramblings every Friday in October, and you're going to get Halloween-themed games on our Tuesday uploads. Good times. So, we encourage you to embrace your inner ghoul and keep watching. And if you want to drop a comment, maybe a suggestion for a Halloween-y topic, go for it. If you want to tell me how, I'm a spooky little sucker, go for it. But make sure you like, subscribe, click that notification bell, because I promise you, the Halloween goodness has just begun, and you are not going to want to miss a little bit of it. Not even the tiniest little fraction of it. So that means you're going to want to get your alerts. You're going to want to subscribe. The Munsters may have been told occasionally to go home, but your home is right here on Roulette Productions, so feel free to stay. And don't forget to check out our playlist of all our Halloween ramblings of years past. Good times. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and enjoy the season.